It's Anja here, and I'm back with another video for Ophelia Talks. And today we are looking at the corner to corner technique, and we are doing granny clusters. So today I am going to show you how to do a square, a rectangle and a triangle using the same corner to corner granny cluster technique. Okay, let's get started. We're going to make a slip knot and do it whichever way you can or whichever way you normally do it. Insert your hook and let's get chaining. So we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Then you go back to the first chain that you did, insert your hook, picking up 1 strand on the front, 2 strands on the back, yarn over the yarn, pull it through the stitch and pull it through the loop on your hook. You've now done a slip stitch and you have created a little circle. We're going to chain 2 for a side. 1, 2. Then we are going to do our first granny cluster. So a granny cluster is made up of 3 double crochets. So you yarn over, insert into the circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So again, yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we have done our first cluster, our only cluster of this row, and now we need to do a side. So you're going to yarn over and do 1 more double crochet for the side. So this is the first row done. Let's start the second row. Chain up 2, turn. You're going to do a granny cluster in between the double crochet of your side and the cluster in your row, so right here. So insert into there and you are going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets. There we go. Then you are going to skip the cluster of the row below, and then you are going to try and find, there we go, the location between the cluster and the side. So you go in there and you do 3 double crochets there. And that's your second cluster for that row. Then you have to do a side. So the side here is made up of a double crochet. I try and go into the chain here, the chain below. Sometimes I can't get in there or it just doesn't work. So then I also go in between there in the same location as where you have put your cluster. But sometimes with turning your hook, you can get into that chain and you do your side double crochet. Let's do the next row. Chain 2, turn. Straight away we're doing that cluster in between the side and the first cluster of the row below. Then you are doing your cluster in between the clusters from the row below. So you skip a cluster in between here, you're going to do a cluster. Then you skip a cluster, and in between the cluster and this location here, your side, that's where you're going to do your next cluster. Clusters are made up of 3 double crochets. And then of course you finish your row by doing a double crochet for the side into, try and get into the chain. That's a little bit low. I like to go a little bit higher, but like I said, if it doesn't work, just do it in the same space as your cluster. There we go. Okay. And to be honest, from now on, it's a repetition of what we've been doing. So chain 2, straight away a cluster in between the side and the first cluster. Then you do the clusters in between the clusters from the previous row. And again, because each time you're going to be increasing the amount of clusters you will be doing on each row, because your rows are growing. Then last location here between the cluster and the turning chain. Yeah, 3 double crochets. And then of course, don't forget to do the double crochet for your side in between there as well, or into that chain is fine. So this way, as you can see, we are growing our C2C Granny Cluster, and we are each time getting longer and longer rows to do. So chain 2, turn, and do your clusters. Now you can just keep going and you will end up with a huge triangle, and that will be perfect for a shawl. But of course, I know that some of you will be wanting to make a square blanket from this, or even a rectangular blanket. So we will have to look at how you are going to make your decreases if you want to turn this into a rectangular blanket or a square blanket. So first of all, you need to establish that you are wide enough. Okay, so if you say now, okay, that's it, this is how long I want my side, and this is the side that I still want to grow. So if you want to make a rectangular blanket, you need to keep going, need to keep doing this until you have achieved the width of your blanket. Not the length, but the width. So once you've got the width, you can then say, okay, I am going to stop increasing on this side, but I will keep increasing on the other side. So decrease here, increase there. So what you do then is you chain 2, you turn, but you don't do that first cluster here. You skip that location and you do your first cluster in the next location. See? And this way you have now determined how wide your work is going to be. So let's keep going. And let me show you what to do when you get to the other side. Because we are going to be making a rectangle now. I'll show you in a moment also how to do a square or how to finish off your rectangle. So we've made it to the end here. I'm going to do my usual cluster and my usual side. Oh, I'm going to have to go into it with the cluster. And then you chain 2, you turn, and you do as what we were used to. You do your cluster into that very first location straight away. And then you keep going with doing your clusters. Now before, when we were doing increases on both sides, of course our rows were growing and every row was longer. here we are now decreasing on one side and increasing on the other. So these rows will remain the same length. So if you're going to be making a rectangular blanket, from now on, your rows will be the same length. So I've now arrived at my last location here, and here I am going to do my double crochet for the side, and I'm going to place it on top of this here, on top of sort of in between that first double crochet or the last double crochet from that cluster and the chain there. So you yarn over and you go in there and you do your double crochet, finishing that row. Then you chain 2, you turn, and you don't do that first location, but you straight away go to the next one to do your first granny cluster of the row. And you keep doing your granny clusters until, of course, you get to the end of the row. Where you are still doing your increases. So let me just show you what the work looks like now. Okay, so just one more double crochet for my side. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, oh, maybe better this way, I don't know. This was the width when I decided I wanted to go longer. So here we are, we now have a rectangle. If I now want to finish this rectangle, or if I want to finish my square, so you don't necessarily have to do those 2 rows that I've just done, you can just skip those. If you want to make a square blanket, then keep on increasing on both sides. Once you've decided that you want to decrease and turn your work into a square, you are then going to start decreasing on both sides. So just now we decreased on one side, now we are going to decrease on both sides. And you will notice that your rows will become shorter. So in this work, when you do a actual square, you will only ever do one long row, the longest row, and then you decide to decrease. Of course, when you are doing your rectangle, you will be doing the same row again and again to make it longer. So let's see how we can decrease. Chain 2, turn. Don't do the increase here, but skip to go to the next location. Do your cluster there. Next location. And you work your way to the other side. And here you do your last cluster. Then you do the side double crochet, chain 2, turn, don't do one here, go straight to the next location, do your granny cluster there, continue your row doing your granny clusters. And when you get here, you do your double crochet on top of that turning chain there. And as you can see, look, we are now decreasing on this side as well. and we only have a very small corner to do. So my rows are now getting shorter and shorter. The last row I only did 3 clusters. This row will only be 2 clusters. And already I'm doing my side double crochet. Chain 2, turn, no cluster here, cluster into the next location, and already I'm doing the side double crochet. Go. Then we're just going to do 2 chains, turn, and a double crochet into that side to turn that into a nice corner. And there we have it. This is our rectangular version of the corner to corner granny cluster technique. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!